Hello and welcome to yet another session of India Employer Forum Samvaad, our dialogue series where we bring together leaders to exchange the ideas and the changing world workforce and the way work is happening. Of course, after 2020, there are a lot of changes. And last year, rather, I would say this financial year, FY 2025, we have seen a lot of GCCs coming into India. And that prompted us to think about how do we start some conversation and learn from the GCC leaders. And therefore, we invited Mr. Jaljith Narayanan today for our session on the HR shift from support to strategy. Earlier, GCCs were just looked upon as support functions, but now they are strategic advantages and strategic modes. And none other than HR becomes the foundation for that. Jaljit, I'm pretty sure that you would agree with it, right?
Absolutely. I think lots that is changing, and I think India is probably has become the cradle of the global GCCs, more like that. I think there's a whole lot of things happening in the GCC space, new investments coming in. So I think it's a good time for the country as a whole that there is a lot of interest. Um, Probably the way they see India is changing today. I think what we offer is good talent at good price. So I mean that's probably the big advantage as well. That we offer talent at the right price, which is probably even more appealing when things are competitive across any business for that matter. So I think I fully endorse your view here.
So, before we proceed further, let me introduce myself. I'm Praveen Koshti, AVP Marketing at Teamlead Services. I had General Staffing and Degree Apprentice Programs Marketing function. And I'll be your host on India Employer Forums this session today. And especially for those who are not aware about what India Employer Forum is, India Employer Forum is a not-for-profit organization. It's a community which brings the employer's perspective on the forefront, especially for India at 100, where we talk about employment, employability, and ease of doing business. And this from the perspective of what we are doing, what are the opportunities that we have, and what are the challenges that we have to solve for. Yeah. Before we proceed, I'm really very happy, Jaljit, for you to graciously accept our invitation and request. Let me just introduce you to our audience. So Jaljit is General Manager and Head of HR at Nissan Digital. As far as his experience is concerned, very diverse and very unique, and that's why we thought that we should reach out to him. So Jaljit brings experience across manufacturing, telecom, and IT. And he is known for building strong talent, capability, and culture in complex and fast-changing environment. Great to have you, Jaljit, here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. And on India Employer Forum, what is Teamlease doing? Actually, Teamlease is a knowledge partner. We provide expertise, research, insights, and a lot of other insights for the IEF's initiatives. So, as we talked about, GCCs, and you are heading one GCC as the people supply chain company, we being people supply chain company, and you being the backbone of the strategic moat of people for Nissan Digital. I thought that let me just, bring a perspective. So, HR in general for GCCs are actually not only evolving, but they are becoming not only a moat but strategic advantage, right? And you people are actually the foundation on which the success of a GCC is dependent. Yeah. So, a very, very interesting place to be in. And I wish had I not been in maybe marketing, I would have probably been in HR in generally GCC sector. So first thing that I want to, bring in this discussion is about role and evolution of HR in a strategic mandate, such as the digital or GCC context. Yeah. So over your long journey across industries, so you have worked with manufacturing, you have been with services. So, two different spectrum of offerings, in fact, for economy also. And now you are in GCC, which is the new breed as far as the economic movements are concerned. Uh, so, how has the core mandate of HR in general has changed in GCCs like digital delivery centers over the years?
So GCCs are, as you know, these are basically captives. These are captives could be in any sphere. You know, it could need not be always technology. It can be in engineering, R&D. It can be in people services. You know, things like that. GCCs are not, so by definition, it can encompass a whole lot of things, right? So uh, now, and there's a reason, and there's a strategic reason why GCs are put in place. You know, why GCs matter, why GCs are relevant today, right? So companies used to work largely, if you look at most of their work, were either in source or work through vendors. And as you know that, you know, it could be your engineering work, your design work sometimes is outsourced, or your people shared services is outsourced, things like that. So there was a choice between how much to keep and how much do we and what is non-critical. That could be, that was how the definition was at the when we talked about traditional outsourcing, right? So that's where the concept of GCs in a certain way evolved, right? That's how I see it. So those were early beginnings where we companies looked at uh, avenues to outsource, which means what are those um, probably transactional things to outsource in the HR space, for example, right? So that was one model, right? We call it HR shared services, and there are other areas where companies found reason to outsource, which is ISIT, IT, for example, right? Companies which are typically not core IT companies, which are product companies, for example, or you know any consumer-based companies. They found IT as something that they could outsource. They did not need it to be in-house. So that was how traditionally businesses worked. But as they scaled up, that is when the need for looking at how much to keep versus how much to give out, how much to delegate, or how much to outsource, right? That came into being. So it's a balance that companies had to strike. And as you were scaling globally, there was a need for looking at cost, because obviously outsourcing was not cheap. It's not doesn't come cheap. It's always there is expense. Certain countries outsourcing can be extremely expensive, but you still need the talent to do the work, right? So
Correct.
many times, despite all that, outsourcing kept on happening. And that is where the concept of GCC came into a lot more prominence, right? Where we looked at, can we look at a centralized, capability center where we could do a lot of work and in a place, in a country where there is talent available and probably at the right, as I mentioned, the right price, where there could be synergies where you can really work out a very, very cost effective model, right? And which can cater to the globe today. Geographical boundaries don't really matter. I think people can work across shifts, across catering to every region that they can. So those were the things that came into being, and that's how this is became a lot more uh, prominent. And even today, as I mentioned, in India, I think the growth is phenomenal. If you look at
Yeah.
uh, American companies, German companies, Japanese everyone is into, this. They're kind of building their own is in India, and that is where the growth is really seen.
Yeah.
And HR has been a partner all the way. Now we can't take HR out of the equation, as you rightly mentioned, right? HR has been a partner all throughout this journey, right? And here now, what is important is, while we are talking about captives, we are also talking about a lot of inherent knowledge that you need to retain, right? And that is where the role of HR is in terms of acquiring people, as well as building that domain expertise, as well as retaining the people, right? Because a captive is, you can't keep rotating a lot of people. You can't have a churn all the time, because there are certain capabilities which are not very difficult, not very easy to find. So, and industry specific, there are domains. There are, for example, in automotive, there are certain domains which are for example, engineering design or manufacturing supply chain. Some of these are domains where you need expertise. You need people with domain expertise. So HR has a key role to play in terms of acquiring the right people as well as building those strengths, those capabilities through internal mechanisms, your career management, your talent management framework, your learning and development avenues, platforms, uh, and also by retaining the right people so that you don't lose that knowledge out to industry, in a competitive world. So that's where I think HR has been a strong enabler, a strong partner, I would say. And also in terms of calling out the risks, HR has to be strategic. You can't be operational, although you will have to look at calling out the risk, as you can see in the time, what is changing, what is the competition doing, what is happening differently. So this is where the insight that HR provides become very, very important. So that's where you have to lead the way. You can't be a follower, and just follow the mandates of the organization. You also need to lead the way in a certain sense, because when it comes to people, this is the people business, and that is where you need to play a larger role.
The evolution you talked about and the strategic way in which HR has evolved, especially in the sector of GCC. Of course, whenever we organize a lot of events, and in that we talk about, we want to grow and we are going to grow. India at 100 is expected to be 35 trillion economy, and you cannot put people out of that equation. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So HR is anyways and always going to be the
Integrate.
strategic moat for organizations. And in fact, recently we have released in TeamLease, we have been working on this research paper and white paper for a couple of months. In fact, we had spoken with a lot of business leaders, HR leaders, and we had done a couple of surveys also. And we have released one white paper called Workforce Maturity Model. So it is completely based on CMM, that is Capability Maturity Model, in which we are talking about 5 levels of HR evolution, and we are talking about 4 strategic pillars of HR maturity. And what are those pillars and how they help you build a very strong HR centric organization. So from your experience, what are the biggest barriers stopping organizations from moving from, say, reactive HR to a structured data driven HR business, and how can HR overcome these kind of the barriers?
See, first of all, we need to understand that the change that is happening in this world, in the business context, I think it is very rapid, right? So there used to be a time when you had time to plan ahead, and you could execute well, right? So that's how the CEO's mandates were a lot more clearer, a lot more, I mean, they had complete control on what they were doing, what they were trying to deliver, right? With HR being the enabler all the time. But today, with what is happening is there's some bit of caution, because there is a lot of things happening at the same time, right? So when you look at the whole geopolitics, which is just playing out very differently, right? And there are reasons why you can't compete in a certain market. You can't even operate in a certain market, and you can't work with a certain market because of the cost, the tariff situation, things like that. Everything is changing so rapidly.
Correct.
And that is one big thing that everybody is grappling with. Second is technology is changing so fast. Now, with that evolution happening, every company, now organization have a limitation in terms of how much can they evolve, how fast they can change. Now, tech companies can evolve faster because that's their business. But when you look at a traditional organization, it's very difficult to change overnight. Keep changing at that pace at which the technology is changing largely. So everybody is catching up. And now everybody does not have all the means to kind of all the time and resources to kind of plan things out. So there is always that issue. So that's the barrier, I would say. That is one barrier I see, that where there is still that reactive mode, because we are still catching up. We are never on top of anything, for that matter. There's competition itself. Now today, the shift in market share for companies in any sector is is the time it takes to shift market share is very short. Now, in our own sector, for example, in automotive, as you can see, the Chinese companies have completely started dominating. You know that very well. How from traditionally being more Japanese, American, German, industry, run businesses, it is that the market share is a lot of that market share shifting to Chinese companies, and that changes happened in quick time. It didn't take much time really. So, and those are the things that the kind of the change with as a geopolitics, the technology changes, and the competitive landscape that is changing. That gives the CEOs and the HR heads very little time to react, and that is where there is a bit of that always catching up mode. That is, while the people may not accept it, I believe that that is the fact that
Yeah.
we still trying to run as fast as we can.
And many times it happens that, it's like David versus the Goliath, right? Smaller companies, because they're very agile, they can, quickly
They move
adapt,
fast.
change, improve.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
correct.
what about the large big ones? The larger companies, they it's a whole culture shift. It's not easy, and even to tweak the culture in a year's time is not easy. You can't bring transformational changes every year on year. It's not possible at the people
Correct.
side, at least. It's not easy. So that's where,
In
yeah,
fact, to see a new, transformation, be it a structure or technology or anything, it takes some time. And you cannot just say that, okay, it is not stable
very
and then we are moving for the next transformation. Correct.
correct, correct,
Completely
correct.
with you on that.
So
Yeah. Yeah, great points actually, with geopolitical as well as the bigger size versus a smaller size and so on and so forth. These things are there, so there are multiple barriers, and we have to be cognizant. And it depends on organization or the kind of industry you are in, and that defines how you are going to take care of those barriers or move beyond those barriers. Very very
yeah.
valid point, Jaljit. Thank you so much. So quickly, I'll move to capability part of our discussion, because HR is not just getting people and making them available. It's more about performance, capabilities, culture, ownership. So how is HR reimagining all these things in the fast changing world where innovation, accountability, and capabilities, all these things are equally or far more important now?
So, what really moves people is now when you look at working with people, what is important is you should ground them on the values of the organization. That has to drive behaviors. Very simple, right? You cannot bring in some new behavior. You can't expect new behaviors on the go, right? It's not possible. And as I mentioned, the larger organization except and especially they find it very difficult to adapt and change or transform at that speed, right? So that's the aspect. So your culture document, basically, your culture and values document should encompass all the right behaviors that people have to live in a volatile environment, in some way. I mean, that's the bedrock. You cannot. That is the base where people will have to align, right? You cannot keep on tweaking that all the time, but it is fine to tweak, but then when you tweak it, there has to be a solid reason why are you changing it, so, and people should be convinced that that's the right thing, that values are changing and that cultural thing is required, because how things are moving forward, and that acceptance has to be very very strong, right? So what I feel is that, uh, for instance, in Nissan, for example, we have what is called the Nissan Way, the new Nissan Way. That's our culture document, and that is something
Hmm.
that encompasses transparency, it encompasses future, it encompasses innovation, it encompasses inclusivity. Everything that you can think of, the way people have to be, is all in that, all built into that. And what you can do is you can build over it. So all your mandates need to be built on that foundation, right? And that's how people rally around it. If people see something unrelated, they will stay away. They don't know why are we doing this change, right? So as long as your value systems is fully understood, and people follow that, then you can build your talent practices, your uh, business deliverable execution, everything on top of that, because that will work, because people, the behaviors are aligned,
Correct.
and therefore there will be a lot more synergy in the organization, right?
So basically, the guardrails are there from the values that you have defined.
Absolutely, that is the base. You cannot keep tampering with that all the time. It could change in a couple of years, that you can look at a different document, but then how do you again cascade? There's a lot of process that we have to go through to ingrain that. But at least then
Correct.
you run with it for some time. Don't keep changing it. So somewhere you need to give it a time to what you call settle down, and show and give you results, right? So your culture cannot be kind of a changing phenomenon all the time. Somewhere you
Correct.
need to kind of stick to something and then build on top of it. That's what
Yeah.
I feel.
So this culture point actually, Jaljith, it brings one more interesting concept, or evolution on forefront, or in my mind, that in last couple of years, uh, data has changed a lot of things, right? HR analytics. I remember 10 years ago, HR analytics used to be one new thing. However, if you look at last 3 years, ChatGPT has changed almost everything, right?
Yeah.
So, how do you see, the cultural aspect of having the technology, or the evolutionary technology or revolutionary technology coming in, and it actually kind of disrupting maybe the culture, or becoming a part of culture? That could be two of the things that are actually going on in my mind. So I'll just try to phrase my question, that how do you foresee the intersection of, say, HR, data, technology, and usage of AI, for example? Uh, some of the companies that they clearly say that no, you are not going to use AI for your uh, confidential data. But a lot of companies or teams are actually trying to use AI for the next level of making things easy. So how 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 does it work for an organization like yours, which is actually a global delivery organization, at the same time such a big organization that you have privacy in place and so on and so forth?
So when it comes to AI, there is a few things that we need to keep in. One is that there is a lot of AI that we use in our day-to-day lives. That is one side of it. That is also part of the change that has happened, right? So all of us use some bit of AI, in what we do, and you can't avoid it completely. I mean, AI is always there, in even in your search today, anything that you give, or any transaction that you do, there is a bit of AI involved, right? So you are in that ecosystem anyways, right? So that is one side of it. The other one is coming to enterprise, where there is a need for AI to deliver something, at work, things like that. There are certain tools, certain platforms that you need to work with. It could be Gen AI platform, or some kind of thing where that will help you work better, work, more agile, or and maybe simplify some of your tasks, etc. Right? Whereas agent take and things like that. So that is where the whole landscape is. There is as I said, a personal usage aspect, and there is also an enterprise, need for using the right AI tools, to work with. That's how that's the overall the AI landscape that we as employees, all of us know about. Now, while I'm talking about this, now it's when you look at HR as a function, there is always a lot of options that you have, to kind of improve your work processes. There are so many things that are available today. But what is not clear is that the need for AI. Many times I see that you can't run behind AI without a clear objective. What is that? What problem is that AI going to solve for you?
Correct, correct.
I sometimes don't see a lot of that. I see people talking about AI, this, that, but I really don't know which problem has AI solved in that organization, really.
So
Today
putting
is
cart before the horse, actually, right? So people putting cart before the horse, but the technology is available. Let's try to solve something.
something, and they don't know what it is. If you ask them something, there's no clarity here, and it's just that they have something. They have, let's say a recruitment AI which helps with hiring probably. Now, but how much has that really delivered results? People don't know. Today, it's just that they invest, because there is money to invest, so let's invest. Now that's everyone is running behind, hey, let's also do something. It's not required. Now, there is always a good, I still value human judgment a lot, because in HR, as leaders, in HR, there's a lot of value for human judgment. Even now, I'm telling, when it comes to people decisions, it is paramount. You can't just depend on some profiling of somebody and just taking it. You can't do that. While that is fair, but then there is always that experience that you bring in, which can help take the right decision when it comes to people. So I'm saying that while there is an intersection happening, there is always a need to kind of embed the human judgment with the AI, and why that AI is required in the first place. So all those questions need to be answered, and that is how this will be. It will kind of be better, or better used, better utilized. Otherwise, it's just that we are doing different things, and then just running behind the wrong the wrong agenda, and then probably it is not really delivering the result it should, right? So that's my view. While it may sound a little cautious, but then I feel that HR leaders need to be responsible. HR leaders um, need to take decisions on investing in AI for the right reasons. And I'm with them, and I'm with those leaders who really have shown change, and really in terms of what results have they brought by doing this, right? So, I mean, unless we see that it's all I would say leave it as
Correct. So
jargon.
it's the technology, and I mean it's the tool. How you have to use. I think first we have to understand the tool, and then understand the why, the what, and how. So and then you can start using this tool. And I'm pretty sure you must appreciate that AI is actually changing a lot of things in a positive way. Some things are
Absolutely.
becoming auto mode. In fact, I used to be on LinkedIn very often, and now I see a lot of long posts, and I realize that, oh, it's not
Yeah,
human
yeah.
written. So,
Absolutely.
so
No, that's all happening now as we go.
correct, correct,
So just to add, there is a lot of fakeness. I would say everything has become fake today. Even a post, you don't know how much of effort that person has really put in to kind of write it down.
correct,
And that's a sad part. Now, while life has become easier, but then the genuineness that people used to bring and that we look forward to from people is sometimes, it's kind of, becoming a more and more vague, and more and more hazy today. You really don't know what is the truth behind it.
correct. And that's the way actually I see it as being a marketeer. I can send maybe 100,000 mails in a day, but that doesn't, create a human relationship. And that's what I like about, say, a platform like IEF or we organizing events, where actually we are talking to people one on one, or maybe we are bringing together a couple of people and then having some brainstorming sessions. Uh, for India at 100 that we talked about in the beginning, and the agenda with which IEF was started. Uh, you are very, very senior person with multiple industries, multiple, kinds of engagements and experiences that you have. What would be the one mindset shift or core skills or non-negotiable that you would want to recommend or suggest to the professional or the next generation? It's like, building the legacy for the next generation. What would that be?
I've always believed that if you're talking about the HR professionals, then I would strongly believe that there is a every HR professional needs to have a CEO mindset. Okay, HR should start thinking like the CEO, and that was a missing piece in the past, right? So HR looked at, they were relegated to the boundaries of their function, and that mandates of the function they were delivering, right? they did not evolve beyond it. The thinking did not evolve beyond it. It is more like, what do we need? What is that we need to, what's on the table to be done? And rather than really looking at which direction the company is headed, right? So I think what has to change for HR professionals is to think beyond HR. See, HR is definitely, um, there is a lot of change happening from that operational mode to more strategic mode. But when you say strategic, it's also thinking business, thinking strategic in terms of business, right, and not just strategic in terms of HR, right? So that's the important piece. So I believe that every HR person should aspire to be a CEO someday. And there are so many examples I can think of. There are so many leaders today have become CEOs of large global companies, right? So, I mean, the examples are there. So that is where the change really has to happen. That's one non-negotiable mindset that I want all HR people to have, right? I mean, if you have that, everything else is part of, now you'll have your resilience, your courage, your boldness. Everything is part of being thinking like the CEO, right? You can't be you can't be conservative when you think like a CEO. You have to be bold. There's no other way. So that's the mindset you should have, right? And that will take you places, because that's the one and only mindset that you need to carry, and I think that should really propel you in your career, like anything. So that is my a small suggestion for young HR professionals if they are looking at something, right?
Yeah, actually, a very interesting point. I have been an entrepreneur, and I was talking to one of my colleagues who had been an entrepreneur too. And we've always been thinking that, okay, what is good for the organization, not necessarily for me or for my business or for A, B, or C. And that's how we actually think, because we come from an entrepreneurial background, and that has to, I think, has to be inculcated in the people for the coming
Absolutely.
time.
When I say CEO mindset, it also includes entrepreneurship, because a CEO cannot be an operational. He is also somebody who has to build the business, grow the business. So your entrepreneurial spirit is part of that. So when I said simplified it as CEO mindset, I feel I believe that every other value that goes into it is covered in that. So, and as you rightly said, entrepreneurship is very integral to that.
I have enjoyed discussing all these, challenging or growing and opportunities for us as organizations as well as for India. Uh, Great having this conversation with you, Jaljit. The conversation actually for me unpacked transformation that happens and how HR has evolved and how HR plays a key role. I keep on repeating this, the moat, strategic moat for the organizations, and especially for GCCs when we are talking about your organization as GCC, right? So thank you
Yes.
so much for joining us, Jaljit. I would like to have more conversations with you in future. Uh, Great having you, and we'll continue this discussion going forward. Thank you so much.